Wealth and this magnificent view.
Couldn't agree more.
May our kingdoms prosper as beautifully as the stars.
John chapter 14. Let not your heart be troubled. Ye believe in God. Believe also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you unto myself, that where I am, there ye may be also.
Because see, we're going to have these different nations in slavery, not only on the earth, but also on other planets. That's the glory of the kingdom. We're going to have servants on other planets. We're going to colonize other planets. All right? We're going to expand. You think about this truth, you think about the gospel, you think about the plan of Yahweh Hashem Yahushai. Hey, you got that one song by Drake, God's plan. When you think about God's plan that's going to take place on the earth, there's really a blueprint for what's going to happen all throughout the entire universe. For all throughout the entire universe. What we're doing is a part of a blueprint. You know, like this truth is a franchise, and it's going to branch out. It's going to expand all throughout the universe, man. To distant galaxies, you know. So don't be surprised, you know, you brother, the hopeful elect, the Lord give you your own galaxy or your own planet, own planets, and you colonize them, and you implement the laws, statutes, and commandments on them, and you're going to have servants on these planets. All right?
John chapter 14. Let not your heart be troubled. Ye believe in God. Believe also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you unto myself, that where I am, there ye may be also.
Wealth and this magnificent view.
Couldn't agree more.
May our kingdoms prosper as beautifully as the stars.
All right, Shalom. First and foremost, I'd like to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shah, Bahashem, Kakodash. Double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples to his younger brothers. And peace and blessing salutations to the hopeful lake out there pushing his word and truth and in sincerity across the four winds in the name of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shah, pushing to get up out of here. Shalom to the hopeful elect, the believers, the listeners whom have came back to the obedience of the scriptures through faith in Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shah. All right. And what I want to go into today, you know, dealing with the legacy, all right, of Edomite Christianity, you know, and as we understand, all right, these devils, all right, because you go into the scriptures, there's only two nations of people that was promised, you know, the whole earth, you know, as an inheritance. All right. And the difference between the inheritance, okay, that was given to Jacob, okay, and the inheritance that was given to Esau, well, our inheritance will be eternal, okay, and Esau's inheritance will be temporal, and it will be through the sword. All right. And not only will he gain it through the sword, but he will maintain his inheritance through constant war, all right, strife and confusion and deception. Okay. And one of his main, okay, forms of deception was Christianity. Okay. So let's get a couple of precepts, and then I got a video to get into the devil King Leopold, okay, of Belgium. You know, he's not talked about much, you know, and Esau really, you know, wanted to erase that devil, all right, and his wickedness, out the books, which is going to go into. Okay, so now let's go into the blessing of Esau. This is Genesis chapter 27. Okay, and this is after Jacob was blessed with everything, with the eternal kingdom. Okay, of righteousness. Esau would be blessed with the kingdom, but it would be through the sword, through violence, and through wickedness, and it would be temporal. Okay, so this is the book of Genesis 27. Okay, in 39, it says, and Isaac his father answered and said unto him, behold, thy dwelling shall be the fatness of the earth and the dew of heaven from above. So the devil was blessed with the fatness of the earth, and the way that he would go about, to obtain his blessing will be through the sword, all right, grape, all right, robbery. You see, it will be very wicked. You see, it says, and by thy sword shalt thou live, and shalt serve thy brother, and it shall come to pass when thou shalt have the dominion, all right, that thou shalt break his yoke from off thy neck. Okay, because when this devil, broke loose, during the time of the Renaissance, that's when he was allowed, to come into his blessing, okay, the dew of heaven, okay, and the fatness of the earth, because as the Greeks and the Romans, he didn't have, it wasn't the fulfillment of the blessing, okay, that he received from Isaac, okay, but the Renaissance period, the devil's rebirth. Okay, when his rulership was rebirthed in the earth, that's when he came into their fulfillment with the sword. When he was able to break loose, from the dark ages when Jake, okay, was in authority. Okay, so you go into the mid, 1400s, early 1400s, the devil began to, all right, emerge back on the scene. Okay, and get power in the earth. Okay, now when you go here, and this was all, prophecy. We go to the book of Luke, it's like the book of Job, chapter 9, verse 24. It said, the earth is given into the hand of the wicked. He covered the faces of the judges thereof is not where and who is he? And this will be an indicator, all right, of who the wicked will be, all right, whom the Lord, all right, would give the earth, because they will cover the faces of the judges. All right, would you go into the scriptures? The Israelites are the true judges of the earth. Okay, so this devil will cover, the judges, the true judges, with his image. Okay, that's why he painted himself as the Most High, the Messiah. All right, the angels, the true Israelites. Okay, the great men of the scriptures, our forefathers. He showed them in his likeness. He portrayed them in his likeness within his rulership. Okay, and there will be an indicator of who the wicked was. Okay, because he would cover the faces of the true judges. Okay, so the earth has been given into this man's hand, and we have to understand, all right, that Christianity, played a major part in his deception, as he will come back into power. Okay, and we have to understand the wicked that the Bible speak of is the Edomite race, the Edomite nation. Okay, and during the Renaissance, they went under the banner as the different European, governments. Okay, but they was all Edomites. Okay, and the earth has been colonized by the different, okay, European governments, and America, all right, is a offshoot, okay, of the British Empire. Okay, so the America is a product, of Europe. All right, the Edomites in Europe, going back to Britain. Okay, so we're gonna go into this video, and I got a few let me see, a little history to read up on in the chat. Well, let's go to the video dealing with this devil. Okay, King Leopold, okay, the second, which he's infamous, for his wickedness and what he did, in the Congo. All right, which you had, you got Jake in the Congo as well. All right, Hamites out there too. Okay, but let's play this. I want to start off. and get to this devil. All right, I'm starting here. All right, and let's blow this up.
18 years old, Leopold II had an arranged marriage with Marie Henriette of Austria. Since he had never actually seen what a loving marriage looks like, the teen couple were incredibly awkward around one another. Someone in the Belgian royal court had commented that seeing them together was like watching a nun and a stable boy. People thought that this was so hilariously accurate that the phrase was repeated amongst everyone who knew them. Apparently, his parents cared so little about Leopold that they never even bothered to tell him about the birds and the bees. Leopold's aunt, Queen Victoria of England, had a great marriage with her husband Albert, and she apparently gave her nephew a lot of sex advice. This was probably just as awkward as you are right now imagining. Leopold II and Marie Henriette eventually figured it out because they managed to have 2 daughters together. When Leopold I died in 1865, Leopold II ascended to the throne as the new King of Belgium. Since his personal life was so dysfunctional, it's really no surprise that his happiness and satisfaction came from attaining material things. According to William II, the ruler of Germany, he was together watching a parade with Leopold II in Berlin when he commented, "There is really nothing left for us kings except money." Before he died, King Leopold II's father made 50 attempts to conquer a colony for Belgium, but he always failed. It was clear to him that the power of other countries like England, France, Germany, and the United States was thanks to colonization. Leopold I believed that without colonizing an African nation, they would never be considered one of the world's larger powers. Leopold II picked up where his father left off, but he did not want to conquer a nation on behalf of Belgium. He planned to make an entire country his personal property. This way he could have complete control and have direct access to the profits. He knew that if he was honest about his greedy intentions, none of the other major powers would agree to let him colonize an entire country for himself. So he simply told everyone that it was his mission to spread Christianity to the Congo. He wanted to convert
to spread Christianity to the Congo. Okay. And this was the devil's MO, going back to the conquistadors of Spain. Okay. And they were coming to the Americas. All right. When these Edomites will come over, they will come, with this narrative that they was coming to spread, the love of Christianity, to the savages. All right, to civilize the savages with Christianity. Okay, and that's the narrative that they ran with for centuries, man. And they was colonizing, okay, and pillaging the earth, man, spoiling the earth. Taking lands, resources, wealth, and whatever they wanted under the banner of colonizing. All right, the savages, man. And this is the foundation of Edomite, all right, Christian nationalists today. What they call white Christian nationalists. All right, these Edomites that proclaim Christianity. All right, today this is their legacy. Okay, and you'll never hear, a vocab go into this. Okay, you'll never hear, all right, the devil Matt Walsh, go into these things. Okay, well, none of these Edomites, they proclaim to be these upstanding, conservative, Christian, all right, Edomite males. Okay, and they do talk about it. Well, they'll say, well, okay, we did it. All right, it wasn't, it wasn't ideal. All right, but look what came of it. All right, now they got iPhones in the Congo because of what we did. Okay, they got DoorDash in the Congo. Okay, because of our ingenuity. All right, it wasn't pretty, but look at the good that come out of it. That's their narrative, man, to justify, all right, their wickedness, man. Okay, but let's play this some more.
and civilize those poor, godless souls. In 1884, he met with 14 other European nations at the Berlin Conference. He pitched his idea for colonizing the Congo and claimed that he wanted to spend his own fortune bringing missionaries to Africa out of the goodness of his own heart. He also promised the rest of Europe that they could freely explore and trade with his country. The Congo, though, was known for being incredibly dangerous and difficult to colonize. The rainforest and savanna, they're filled with gorillas, lions, leopards, and wolves. The Congo River has man-eating crocodiles and hippopotamuses, as well as insects that carry deadly diseases. In general, it was a very wild place, and not many Europeans exactly wanted to go out there and live. If Leopold II wanted to go and take on the challenge, the other powers were pretty much willing to say, well, go on then. A Welsh explorer and journalist named Henry Morgan Stanley already had years of experience in Africa. He was sent on projects by several different newspapers in the United Kingdom, and he became an expert on the continent. Through his writing, he tried to convince Queen Victoria that despite all of the difficulty, he believed it would be worthwhile to colonize the Congo. His suggestions never made any impact until King Leopold II found his work. In 1879, the king sent him on a mission to colonize the Congo. Henry Morton Stanley used parlor tricks to convince the African tribal chiefs that white men were invincible. He used a battery-powered contraption to make his grip so strong that Congolese men almost collapsed from a single handshake. Stanley claims that white men could rip a tree out of the ground with their bare hands. He also held a magnifying glass in the sunlight and used the sun's rays to light a cigar, claiming that white men had power over the sun. Finally, he handed a gun to a native man. He instructed him to step back several yards and try to shoot him. Stanley had taken the gunpowder and bullet out beforehand, of course, and when the young man pulled the trigger, Stanley would double over dramatically, only to take his shoe off and shake the bullet out onto the ground.
So Esau, doing what he does best, which is to project himself to be more powerful than he is. So he, this is what these devils were doing in the Congo, to make it seem like they was gods. Okay? Like they was on, like they was just extremely superior to everyone else. All right, and that's what this devil does, because the Lord has given this man, I say the sword. All right, he's allowed this man to tap into technology, and even with that, this devil exaggerates, his true, he exaggerates like he's just this superior being, but no, the Lord has this man propped up. Okay, and he would always be ahead of the curb, on the left-hand side. Okay. So this is just the tactic. That's one of the main psyops of these devils, is to establish their superiority. Okay, as the Edomite man, is just the superior being in the earth, man. But it's the Lord that has this man propped up. Okay. Matter of fact, let's go from there. We'll come back to it. Let's get this in the book of the book of Psalms. All right. Yeah. Let's get this in the book of Psalms, chapter 73. All right, this is the book of Psalms, chapter 73. Not 75. So like Psalm 75. All right, this is on the book of Psalm 75. All right. 4, it says, I said unto the fools, deal not foolishly, and to the wicked, lift not up the horn. All right. So this is addressed, directly to Esau, the wicked. Okay. And this man deals foolishly within his rulership. Okay. Because the earth has been given to this man, and all he's done was deal foolishly, man. He boasts in himself. All right. He lifts himself up, just if he this, superior. He's been given superiority, but the Edomite man himself is not superior. He's been given superiority over the earth, okay, by a higher power, but he promotes himself to the world, it's just if, he's just this superior being, okay, and this is what they call manifest destiny, all right, or natural selection, while he's, okay, the top nation. It said, "Lift not up your horn on high, which is your power. Speak not with a stiff neck, for promotion coming neither from the east, from the west, nor from the south." All right, which is within the earth. Okay, so any nation that's promoted to power, it was because that's what the will of the Lord wanted. Okay, the Lord makes a nation superior, all right, for His purpose. All right, and you Edomites, you're not a superior people, and you're going to find that out here soon. Okay, but the Most High is the judge. He put up down one and set it up another. Okay, and it was time for Esau to be put up. Okay, and what did he do? He boasted. Okay, he became proud. He doesn't give reverence to a higher power. He only boasts in himself. Okay, but the true, all right, what we about to see, the exposure, all right, is when the devil gets put down because he was set up. Okay, and he was able to boast, because it was just time to be set up. All right, but when it's time for him to be put down, he's not going to be able to boast because he can't stop himself from being removed from power. Okay, well, this is the spirit, okay, of you devils, you Edomites, man. Okay, whenever they will come into power, they will have a very boastful spirit. Let's get this, the book of Psalms, chapter 10. All right, and 2, it said the wicked in his pride doth persecute the poor. Okay, and with these devils in their mind, all right, if they have a stronger military, okay, if they are stronger than you in any way, all right, well, it's meant for them to rule over you and oppress you. Okay, it says, "Let them be taken in the vices that they have imagined, for the wicked boast of his heart's desire." Okay, and that's all the devil boasts about, what he's finna do next. Okay, agenda this, agenda 2030, by year this, by year that. That's all the devil does is boast. Okay, and what he's about to do next, okay, is if he can guarantee that he's going to be in power, okay, in these future dates that he's boasting in. Okay, he says, "And blessed the covetous, yeah, they spread the earth amongst themselves." Okay, they divide the earth amongst themselves, man, amongst these few elite, okay, families that have that covetous spirit. All right, they just want everything to themselves. Okay, this is who's blessed, in this man's kingdom. Okay, it says, "Whom the Lord Yahweh Bashim Shah abhor, the wicked through the pride of his countenance, and would not seek after the Most High." The Most High is not in all his thoughts, man. So this devil, kingdom, all right, is based on him, okay, blessing himself without a thought of the Most High, without a thought of righteousness, man. So let's go here. Okay, so when you go from there, let's go back to the video. Matter of fact, before we do that, let's go here to First Maccabees. All right, and these devils, they've colonized, the earth as the Greeks, the Romans. Okay, and the latest, has been under the banner, okay, of European. Okay, so when you go to the book of First Maccabees, all right, and it was under the Greeks, when these devils really, had their first hegemon, okay, in the earth, to where the Edomite government was the superior government above, these other kingdoms. Okay, this is First Maccabees 1:1. It says, "And it happened after that Alexander, son of Philip the Macedonian, who came out of the land of Shittim, had smitten Darius, king of the Persians and Medes, that he reigned in his stead the first over Greece. Okay, so under Alexander, all right, when you read about him in the book of Daniel, the seventh, you read about the Greek Empire under Alexander in the book of Daniel, chapter 7 and chapter 7 and chapter 8. Okay, it spoke about this empire that would take down the Medo-Persian Empire. Okay, and it says it made many wars and won many strongholds and slew the kings of the earth. And he went through to the ends of the earth and took spoils of many nations, insomuch that the earth was quiet before him, whereupon he was exalted and his heart was lifted up. Okay, so these devils, when the Lord would give them, authority in the earth, they would always become proud, and boast in themselves. His heart, his mind was lifted up, and this is what these devils do. Okay, they become boastful, proud, and no reverence to a higher power, which he's not built to do. There's not in him to give reverence to a higher power. Okay, that's why his rulership is gonna be taken away. Okay, never to come back again, and eventually he's just gonna be eradicated, man. Because these other nations, it's in them to give reverence, to Yahweh Shema Shai. Okay, but to Esau, this devil, he's meant to just be purely rebellious, man. Okay, against everything that's right, and to be proud and boastful. Okay, and then he's thought himself as a god. All right, which he's a nation. They their rulers have done that. But they have it in them, to be humble. Okay, and to understand what it is. All right, but Esau is not in him. Okay, so let's go here. You see, let's go back here. And these heathens in the kingdom, they're always going to be in servitude, all right, to Israel. Okay, they're going to always answer to the government of Israel. They're not going to be in the new covenant. All right, they're not going to be, blessed with those new bodies. Okay, that's promised to Israel. Okay, and they're going to reverence our power. Okay, and they're going to be in servitude, to us forever. So let's play this.
He claims that white men were spirits who could not be killed no matter how hard they tried, and that a bullet would simply pass right through them. This was enough to terrify the chiefs into signing a contract which declared King Leopold II the new owner of the Congo. Of course, the Congolese people had no idea what the contract actually said, but it served as a legal document in the eyes of the European people. Now, Leopold wanted to keep up an image that he was doing good in the country, so he named it the Congo Free State. Henry Morton Stanley published a book about his journey through Africa called Through the Dark Continent. He was able to go on a lecture tour around London, and he was even knighted in 1899. Leopold II truly was paying for all of the startup expenses to colonize the Congo out of his own pocket. He appointed governor-generals to manage the various territories of the country. Leopold's men eventually discovered that the rainforest had a plentiful supply of rubber trees. It was essentially like stumbling across a gold mine. At the time, there was a huge demand for natural rubber in order to make tires, but there was a very small supply. The only problem, of course, was finding a way to pay for all of the manual labor required. Leopold II, well, he ordered his men to enslave the Congolese people. Each of the governor-generals had their own tactic to achieve this. Usually, they set a village on fire so that there was nowhere for anyone to hide. They would shoot and capture women of the village and tell the men that if they did not bring back 15 kilograms of rubber by the end of the day, they would kill their wives and daughters. The Congo Free State was anything but free. King Leopold II believed that all of these people were his personal slaves, and he could do whatever he wanted with them. King Leopold personally handed out bonuses to the commanders if they could produce more rubber by any means necessary. Leopold began to grow his own private army in the Congo called the Force Publique. When his men were destroying villages, they would pick out the tallest and strongest young men to recruit as soldiers. These soldiers were instructed to systematically kill anyone who disobeyed the orders of the governor-generals. They were told to not waste any ammunition and that they must kill a man with a single bullet. They were required to bring back one severed hand for every bullet fired. If they did not, they would be killed by their general. This led to the soldiers cutting off hands of people that were still alive whenever they wasted ammunition. Meanwhile, in Europe, people had no idea what was actually going on. Word got around that King Leopold II needed more soldiers to help with his Christian mission to colonize the Congo. Hundreds of young men from Belgium, Italy, Norway, Sweden, Denmark, they all signed up to join the Force Publique. They were taught that these black natives were animals and not fully human like them, so they shouldn't feel guilty about killing them whenever necessary. After a while, these men, they became desensitized.
You know what you call dehumanizing, and what he's just about to say, desensitize you. Because when you dehumanize someone, you become desensitized to what happens to them. You know, so these are tactics that this devil has been doing for centuries, man. Okay. What they've done, you know, over there in the Middle East with Ishmael and, you know, Hamas and, you know, Afghanistan. Okay, once they're able to dehumanize you, then people are desensitized to what happens to you. Okay, and Jake is going to be the latest example of that. Okay, Jake has been dehumanized, and now, all right, when the devil goes with his move, people are going to be desensitized to what happens to Jake. You know. This is the hey, the devil. He's been using these same formulas for centuries, man. Okay, he just more technology now.
To the killing. Some of these soldiers would gut people and pull out their entrails or slice off a group of men's genitalia, only to hang them in a row. Some of the governor-generals wrote letters to King Leopold II about these scenes because they were actually proud of their brutality. They believed that the worse they treated the Congolese people, the harder they worked. Over time, King Leopold's men managed to enslave the entire population of the country. Even though he'd promised that the rest of the world could visit the Congo whenever they wanted, King Leopold II became very nervous when he learned that Arabian merchants were coming to gather some rubber for themselves. He did not want to lose his monopoly over the industry, so he declared that they needed to go to war with these so-called Arab slave traders, which would free the Congolese people. This sparked the 2-year Congo-Arab War. In 1895, an English merchant named Charles Stokes was on a mission for the Germans to travel to the Congo to purchase rubber. He was hung by the Force Republique without receiving a trial. Germany and Britain, they were outraged that he was killed without ever committing any crime. Leopold was forced to pay substantial fines to both governments for violating the treaty, and the incident was called the Stokes Affair. However, paying this fine, it was a drop in the bucket. King Leopold II made a profit of 220 million francs, which would be worth more than $1 billion today. Leopold II hired a team of propaganda writers to publish books and articles about what a great job he was doing. None of these writers had ever actually traveled to the Congo Free State, but they were happy to glorify their king's Christian mission. However, journalists from Great Britain and the United States were beginning to travel to the Congo Free State and report on what they saw. In the year 1890, an American Civil War veteran named George Washington Williams visited the Congo Free State, and he was horrified. He wrote an open letter to King Leopold II, recounting the horrors that he witnessed while visiting the country. The king, he never replied. A man named Edmund Denny Morrill worked as a clerk at a shipping firm in Liverpool, England. Belgian ships would come and go, delivering rubber to Liverpool from the Congo. Muriel knew that it wouldn't be possible for Belgium to produce such a high volume of rubber unless they were using slave labor. He began investigating, and when he discovered the horrors about what was actually happening, he wrote several anonymous articles for a British newspaper called The Speaker, exposing the truth about what he saw. He wrote that this was the greatest crime that has ever been committed in the history of the world. In 1901, the shipping company offered Morrill a job to manage the shipments of rubber to and from the Congo. They were willing to pay him a huge salary in exchange for his silence. He turned it down and became a full-time journalist instead. He became so passionate about the cause that he began publishing his own newspaper called the West African Mail with any new information that he found. In 1906, he published a book called Red Rubber. Another journalist named Roger Casement was sent to interview people of the Congo to get their testimonies about the human rights abuses in the country. He realized that it was crucial to convince the white Christian missionaries to come forward with their stories because they had been there from the beginning and they could prove that King Leopold II was aware of the atrocities. After Roger Casement's report was published, King Leopold II, he knew that if he did not respond with his own inquiry, this would be the end of him. He sent his own international commission to the Congo in the hopes that he could bribe them. He thought that he could pay them off to publish whatever he wanted them to say. But this totally backfired. A Christian missionary named John Harris had been living in the Congo Free State for years. He and his wife devoted their lives to helping the Congolese people. When King Leopold's international commission showed up, John Harris was ready for them. He gathered a group of Congolese people who testified to the death, torture, mutilation, rape, and enslavement that they suffered at the hands of the king. His wife, Alice Harris, was a photographer, and she was able to present them with photographic evidence of the horrors that they had seen. When the International Commission returned to Belgium, they published a 50-page.
Yeah, you just see these people with no hands. Okay, and most likely a lot of you Jake, man. All right, you see them work till they'll starve. You know, their organs are showing through their skin. Okay, like this guy nose is cut off. Okay, this is oh boy, you goddamn devils, man. You see, and this was all right the norm amongst all these devils. See, this is just the Congo, but they was doing this all throughout the earth, man. Okay, mainly where Jake was at. Okay, and this is you know, this is not even 130 years ago. Okay, a few generations ago, man.
Report on all the human rights abuses that they had found in the Congo. They submitted it to King Leopold II. Once he realized that he could no longer get away with his lies, Leopold ordered all of the Congo Free State records to be burned so that there would be no evidence of his crimes. In 1908, the Congo became a Belgian colony, but they didn't seize it from the king. Instead, they paid him 50 million francs for the purchase. He died just 1 year later, in 1909. Once the Belgian government visited the Congo, they found far more profitable resources than just rubber. There were diamonds, gold, and ivory that could be sold for massive profits. The government ended slavery and employed the Congolese people to work for wages instead. Very soon after, Belgium became extremely wealthy. The city of Brussels now has some of the most breathtaking architecture in the world, complete with golden statues of King Leopold II, all because of the money that he brought from the Congo.
See that? So the devil is still honored amongst Esau. Okay, and look at this image. Okay, you got Jake, you know, the Jake baby, you know, in one hand, Jake man look like on his knees. Okay, and there's these devils, you know, this is how they boast in their conquest, man. Okay. A golden image, man, of this devil, King Leopold II, man, which he was known for his atrocities, man, the way he was doing Jake, the way he was doing, you know, the Congolese, you know, what it says, you know, a lot of Jake, you know, the Africa, you know, because mainly this is like Central West, you know, it's more towards Central Africa, the West. Okay, which most of Jake was in the West. All right, but you know, you got a lot of Jake in the Congo, and the fact that this is documented just lets you know, like, because the Lord wanted these, you know, because one thing about the curses, they follow us as a people, man. This punishment, okay, from on high, the divine punishment, it follows as a people, okay. Now the devil, he did get down on everybody, but he had a special hatred the way he would do Jake, you know. But this devil is still reverenced to this day, as if he was something great. Just he's no different than Christopher Columbus, Hernando Cortez, Pizarro, okay, Thomas Jefferson, and all these devils, man. okay, that are honored today. You know, Andrew Jackson, okay.
But the Belgian government, they had to make a decision. What do they tell the public? Leopold II had lied to his people for a long time, and they looked up to him like a father figure who brought glory to the country. Not only would the citizens be disappointed, but it would make Belgium look terrible to the outside world. Their nation was still less than 100 years old at the time. England and the United States had already outlawed slavery in the 1800s, so the King of Belgium had essentially taken a big step backwards in humanitarian progress. The Belgian government chose to allow their people to continue believing the lie that King Leopold II had built for himself. They taught their children that there was never any slavery in the Congo Free State and that everything King Leopold II did was wonderful. This lie was retold generation after generation to the point where it became their new truth and part of their cultural identity. Before his death in 1897, Leopold II created a human zoo at his summer estate. He built a model African village and captured 267 Congolese people to live there. Belgian people showed up to gawk at them, throwing peanuts and bananas over the fence as if they were monkeys. They were forced to stay outdoors in this village in all kinds of weather. Several of those people died of influenza and pneumonia. After he died, the King's estate became the Royal Museum of Central Africa, and it continued to glorify Leopold II's achievements in colonization. Decades after his death in 1958, the government of Belgium even went as far as to replicate his human zoo at the Brussels World Fair, putting Congolese people on display like animals once again. Nearly every Western nation has some history of slavery and genocide, but in most Belgian school classes, they were
That's in 1958. Replicas of a human zoo. Goddamn devil, man. All right, but they love to try to sit on this seat of morality. You know, if they are in a position, you know, to judge what's right and what's wrong, they love to deem, you know, all these different leaders, okay, of the earth unjust. You know, amongst these heathens. You know, they love to call a people barbarian, but there's no one that's more barbaric and savage, okay, and uncivilized than you goddamn devils, man. Okay, and you have a lot to pay for.
never hear the truth about King Leopold II. They will say that slavery never happened in the Congo. Since the records were destroyed, we will never know just how many people Leopold was responsible for killing. Some estimate that it is roughly 4 million, while others believe it is as high as 10. Somewhere between 70 to 90% of the total population was wiped out. In the age of the internet, it has become much more difficult for Belgium to ignore the reality of what happened. In 2018, the curators of the Royal Museum of Central Africa finally decided to change the exhibits to honor the lives lost by the native Congolese people. However, Congolese people who visited the exhibit said that it is still not enough, and that as long as the story is told from the perspective of a Belgian white person, the country will never show the full truth about the monstrous deeds of King Leopold II. In some way, the internet has become an incredible way for smaller voices to be heard.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, the Lord, all right, got these devils noted. You see? And these devils will never tell the truth on their atrocity, okay, over history, man. So let's get a couple precepts, you know. So I just want to tap into that. All right, so you devils don't have to tell the truth, okay, because we serve a just power that knows all and sees all. Okay, so this is the book of Proverbs chapter 15 and 13. It says the eyes of the Lord are in every place, beholding the evil and the good. All right, so you devils, you will never be able to escape your wicked deeds. Okay, and you're gonna go, anyway, you're not gonna go unpunished. Okay, the Lord got a hell of a judgment on reserve for you devils, man. You know, beginning with the complete destruction of your kingdom, okay, and 1,000 years, okay, of hardcore slavery, man. Okay, let's go here because you had the Berlin Conference, all right, and this is when these devils, these European nations, divided up, okay, Africa, man. So I asked the chat, what's the purpose of the Berlin Conference in 1884 and 1885? It says was to regulate European colonization and trade in Africa during Scramble for Africa. It was convened by Otto von Bismarck, all right, the Chancellor of Germany, and involved major, all right, European powers. The main goals of the Berlin Conference, okay, was to avoid conflict between European powers. So these devils just, doing a land grab in Africa, okay, and they began to, step on each other's toes. So they called this conference together to bring some organization to their theft, okay, of Africa, man. It says as European countries rushed to claim African territory, there was a risk of war among them. The conference aimed to prevent this by setting clear rules, establish guidelines for colonization. It says it set up a framework for how European powers could claim African land, mainly by demonstrating effective occupation, actual control of the area, not just on paper. Promote free trade in Africa, especially in the Congo Basin. All right, the now Leopold. Okay, the second, the conference promoted free trade and navigation on major African rivers like the Congo, all right, and all right, the Niger, all right. So wait a minute, uh, it was people there, you know. And see, in this, and see the Esau, like I said, he looks at the earth as a blank canvas, and right, and regardless of the people that's there, okay, he can do what he want, you know. You see, he can just do what he wants. Okay, because you'll read this and you'll think like it was, it was nobody there. Okay, but this devil, he just comes and takes. That's why Howard Shah said, the thief not, all right, come what, but to take, steal, and destroy. This is devil's MO, and this is how he will get the fatness of the earth, all right, through great robbery, murder, theft, and deception, man. Okay, and it says, divide Africa among European powers, though no African representatives were invited. Okay, the European powers used the conference to carve up Africa into colonial, all right, territories, colonial territories. Okay, the key outcome, the General Act of the Berlin Conference was signed. Africa was almost entirely divided among European powers within a few decades. African boundaries were drawn, all right, with little regard to ethnic, cultural, or linguistic realities, causing long-term impact still felt today. All right, so these devils did this with no representatives, okay, of the African nations, okay, the African people at that time. Okay. So you go here. So I asked the chat, I said, could this be compared to the book of Micah, chapter 2, verses 1 through 3? Okay. It says, yes, Micah 2, verses 1 through 3 can be meaningfully compared to the Berlin Conference, especially when looking at the themes of injustice, land seizure, and oppression. Here's a breakdown in the verse. All right, in these verses, the prophet Micah speaks out against those who devise evil plans, seize land and houses, and oppress, and oppress people. Woe to those who plan iniquity. They covet fields and seize them, and houses and take them. They defraud people. Okay, they defraud people of their homes. They rob them of their inheritance. Okay, so this is just a small portion. This in Africa is just just one, account of how they do with the entire earth. Okay, so this is these devils, man. And it says, woe, which is destruction. It said they covered fields and seized them. All right. They once they peep out resources, any wealth in their land, they do what they got to do to get it. Okay. Through propaganda. All right. Through war, they'll bring a pestilence. Okay. Whatever they got to do to get it. You see? And it says, The Most High responds by saying he will bring disaster on such people, for their actions. Okay? Which we in the time now, they're disaster, man. Okay? And you go here, showing you also, we'll get that in Daniel when it speaks of, these three horns and that little horn. Okay? Because I asked it what European governments benefited the most from colonization. It says several European empires benefited enormously economically, politically, and strategically from colonization, especially during the 19th and early 20th centuries. Here are the main colonial powers, all right, and how they benefited. You had the British Empire, all right, the largest and most powerful colonial empire, all right, territories such as India, much of Africa, South Africa, Kenya, Egypt, Canada, Australia, Caribbean islands, and parts of Southeast Asia. Okay, so the benefits is that wealth from resources, cotton, tea, rubber, gold, diamonds. Okay, trade dominance through control of ports and sea routes. Use colonial soldiers in both world wars. Okay, global influence. All right, the sun never sets on the British Empire. Then you had the French Empire, which was another horn spoken of in Daniel. All right, the 7th chapter. You see, territories West and North Africa. All right, Algeria, Senegal, Mali. All right, Indochina, Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, Caribbean, parts of the Pacific. Okay, resources, rubber, coffee, and minerals. All right, cultural expansion. All right, spread French language and education. All right, system. Use African troops. All right, and labors. Okay, in wars. Now you jump down here. All right, show you Belgium. You see this devil, King Leopold. Okay, then you go here. It's that third horn spoken of, which was the Spanish Empire. Okay, so when you go to the French, the British, all right, and the Spanish, well, they're spoken of in prophecy, and we'll get it. Okay, I want to bring that out though, just to show you the accuracy of prophecy. Okay, when you go here to the book of Daniel, the 7th chapter. Okay, because Europe, is nothing but a continuation of, all right, the ancient Roman Empire. Okay, including, America, which is likened to Rome itself. All right, the city. Okay, the centerpiece. Okay, this is Daniel 7. Okay, and 7, it says, and after this I saw in the night visions and beheld a fourth beast, which is the pagan Roman Empire, dreadful and terrible and strong exceedingly, and it had great iron teeth, and it devoured and brake in pieces and stamped the residue with the feet of it, and it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it. All right, and it had 10 horns, which were those 10 vassal, mainly those families, okay, that ran, all right, those regions, okay, that was subservient to the Roman Empire, and the Roman Empire fell, okay, but it came back, okay. They had a wound, okay. It was wounded, that the Western Roman Empire fell, all right, but it came back. You see, under the banner of NATO, America, and the EU. It says, I considered the horns and beheld there came up among them another little horn, before whom there were 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots. And behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things. Okay, so when it says, I considered and beheld, there came up among them a little horn, that was America, which came out of British, before whom there were 3, going back to the British, the French, and the Spanish Empire, okay, or the horns plucked up by the roots, because America had defeated the British, the French, and the Spanish in war. and became the dominant, government, okay, of this beast system, okay? And behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things, man. And you see, the American policy, especially today, under this Trump regime, it's been at the forefront, all right, of Edomite supremacy, okay, throughout the earth, man. This little horn, America, okay? And the Edomite supremacy has been riding, the wave of America, man. You see? But now we're in the time of his fall, all right? But all these Edomites, they've colonized the earth. This is just one isolated event dealing with King Leopold and the Congos under the banner of Christianity, man. Okay, under the banner of Christianity. So let's go here, because this is the sum of the matter. All right, this is Revelation 13:9. It says, if any man have an ear, let him hear. He that leads into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints. You see, here's the patience and the faith of the saints, man. Okay, so this devil, all right, did all this slaughter. Okay, it has, enslaved. Okay, he done all this enslaving and slaughtering in the earth. Well, that's finna come back to him. Okay, because he did too much. He took it too far. All right, and there's a punishment for that. So that's the point. Just wanted to get into that. Lord will, you brothers, all right, and you sisters edified once again. I'm gonna give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushua, Bahashem, Rakakwadash, and double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples to his younger brothers. And peace and blessings salutate to the hopeful. Shalom.